Hello and welcome to our review of the Daban Blast Impulse, or as they call it, the Cannon Impulse. This is a third-party kit that uses the Bandai MG Impulse Gundam's inner frame with some new outer armor details. So right out of the box, you're going to get the Impulse Gundam with the Blast Silhouette and two small armor Schneiders, the Silhouette Flyer, a Beam Rifle, a Beam Shield, and a Beam Javelin with two different effect parts. You also get a small sheet of foil stickers and a sheet of water slide decals, a ton of spare parts including landing gear, action-based attachment parts for the various parts, and a strike adapter for the backpack, small pilot figures of Shin Asuka and Luna Maria Hawk, and an entire black action-base one. So here is the Daban Impulse Gundam. The inner frame is more or less a direct copy of the Bandai MG Impulse. Construction-wise, the outer armor is pretty much the same, though they did add a lot more molded detail. It's also going to come in the Blast Impulse color scheme, adding more blue and black to the Gundam. Here's a quick spin around. As you can see, the core silhouette is still sticking out the back. So the articulation is almost going to be identical to the Bandai version. For a more in-depth look, check out my MG Sword Impulse review. Here is how the arm bend looks, and the knee bend. So for the changes, Daban's version does have a bolt joint at the waist, allowing it to rotate and wiggle around. The Bandai's version is just going to be locked into place, allowing for no wiggle or rotation at all. The shoulders have also been changed quite a bit. Bandai's version are a lot more blocky, while Daban's here are a lot more angular. The back skirt also now has a gray inner frame piece. So moving on to the weapons, the rifle and the shield are going to be carbon copies of Bandai's. So for the new stuff, here is the Kerberos High Energy Long Range Beam Cannon. It's going to be nicely detailed with some missiles on the top. These white hinges here are supposed to be able to move, but they're very brittle, so I avoid touching them. In terms of other moving parts, here is the handle that you can swing in and out, like so. And for the attachment onto the backpack, here is going to have a range of movement thanks to the bolt joint. And here is another hinge of movement. Here is the main backpack. It's going to be a nice combination of green and reds. The booster back here can move up and down like so. You get a lot of nice vent detail back here. On the other side is going to be where you're plugging in the cannons, and here are the connection points onto the back of the Gundam. And finally on the top are two Deluge Hypervelocity rail cannons. They have a good range of movement and they can also extend. So here is the Defiant Beam Javelin. The Blast Impulse is supposed to have two of these, but the kit only comes with one. It's just going to be a singular white part with a hole in the middle to peg into the palm of the hand. And you get two choices of beam effect parts, a small one and a large one. So here is the Daban Impulse all armed up. The Blast Impulse has always been my least favorite impulse, but I have to say it looks pretty good here. The color scheme really works and the added detail is very noticeable. It also doesn't have any issue standing since the cannon barrels on the back basically serve as extra legs. Here he is pulling off a looking down the beam rifle pose, though this is probably not his preferred long-range weaponry. It's pretty easy to bend the cannons under the armpit. He'll stand still just fine, though on the ground is probably not where he wants to be. With the included knockoff Action Base 1 and the Action Base attachment piece, you can take to the skies. And here, up in the air with all his cannons deployed, he's really channeling his inner freedom. Getting him to hold the javelin is pretty easy. I wouldn't expect it, but it actually looks pretty cool. Here is probably my favorite pose. He looks like he's about to go spearfishing. Fishing for some freedom. He's going to have the same transformation gimmick as the Bandai Master Grade, so for more details, please check out the second part of my MG Sword Impulse review. So now for some of my final thoughts on the Daban Blast Impulse Gundam. Being a third-party kit, especially one by Daban, there are some fitting and mold issues. The most troublesome on this kit are probably going to be the calves and the missile pods. The back of the calves have a tiny split that I can't close up no matter how much force I apply. The flap on the missile pods are also very difficult to assemble. Plastic is so weak that you're basically forced to stress them and maybe even break them during the assembly process. Speaking of which, the plastic quality is obviously worse than Bandai's. Going into the pros, outside of being a bootleg, the kit is actually quite solid. It came out before the P Bandai Master Grade Blast Impulse, so the blast silhouette here is completely new. It's quite well done, functional, and looks pretty good. The inclusion of an action base is also a big plus. The deployed cannons simply don't look as good when on the ground. Due to the tight fitting, the kit itself is also quite solid. You don't have to worry about weak joints here. The added detail on the armor is a bit more up in the air though. While it does look nice, it also distinguishes itself from the Bandai version, so it won't quite match if you choose to display this next to Bandai's Master Grade Force and Sword Impulse. With the official Master Grade Blast Impulse being a P Bandai, I think this is a suitable alternative, if you can find it for a decent price and don't mind the detailed outer armor. If you just want an Impulse Gundam, I'd still suggest the Sword Impulse, but for die-hard fans of the Blast Impulse, this isn't a bad option. So this has been my look at the Daban Blast Impulse Gundam. Please comment, like, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.